she didn't just get roasted, she got publicly dismantled primetime by the very people Hollywood usually protects. And it all exploded in the first seconds.
NBC has announced plans for a spin-off to the hit series Suits. It will focus on Meghan Markle's character's struggle to balance her legal career while also caring for an unemployed immigrant. A Christmas photo released by the royal family features a bad Photoshop job where Prince Louis's finger appears to be missing. And this is sweet. Meghan Markle said she has a finger they can use if they need it.
Like, my life was so hard. Everybody's f***ing life is hard.
Yeah,
you were the prince of a goddamn country who dressed up as a f***ing Nazi, and now you're trying to come back as the Pope? Suck it.
My brother's fiancée, Miss Meghan Markle, is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
Prince Harry announced he's getting married to American actress Meghan Markle. And this is super exciting for a lot of people. I mean, because they come from different worlds, you know? Her mom is black, his family's super white, she's an actress, he's on welfare. Like, it's so romantic.
Now for the tricky part. Place in microwave. What is microwave? I don't think we have any of that.
Are you fucking dumb?
It's a microwave, silly.
Don't talk to me like that, you bitch! I'm a fucking duchess! Shake that off!
Oh.
Harry, whose memoir just broke the Guinness record for fastest selling non-fiction book of all time, the story of Prince Harold and his frozen yogurt slinger, is so popular, they're now releasing a version for kids. I don't know if you know about this. It's a twist on The Princess and the Pea. It's called The Prince and the Penis, and it's...
If you had lunch with Meghan Markle, you'd be stunned at how dumb she was. Not because she's black, because I wouldn't think she was black if I looked at her, because she's an actress who was on the show Suits.
Meghan Markle is a lifelong feminist, which she's demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job.
Meghan Markle just won a title nobody is giving a speech for. Most hated person in 2025 let that line sit there because that wasn't some random podcaster chasing clicks. That wasn't a faceless troll hiding behind an egg profile picture. That was mainstream television energy. That was the tone shift. The moment the gloves came off, not quietly, not subtly, but in front of millions. This is a woman who before Prince Harry was a side character on Suits, a legal drama that most casual viewers couldn't name a single plot line from today. And yet somehow, in just a handful of years, she became one of the most polarizing figures on the planet. Not by accident, not by rumor alone, but by stepping directly into the spotlight, grabbing the microphone, and telling the world her version of events over and over and over again. And here's the part that made the entire situation combustible. She handed the comedians the script.
So at the end of the year, 2025, Ranker.com put out a list of the most disliked celebrities. But let's just for the fun of it, let's just look at the top 5, okay? Leading up to Meghan.
Every roast, every jab, every monologue felt less like an ambush and more like a reaction. Like Hollywood collectively decided, you know what, fine. If you want the stage that badly, we'll give it to you. But what truly shocked people wasn't that jokes were being made. It was who was making them. These weren't reckless YouTubers looking for outrage traffic. These were A-list names, carefully managed brands, million-dollar reputations, people who normally triple-check their punchlines before they even breathe near a controversy. And yet, one by one, they all decided she was worth the risk. And then came the moment that cracked the door wide open.
Gone on Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
Chris Rock didn't tiptoe. He didn't cushion. He didn't hedge. He walked onto that stage and in a matter of minutes dismantled the entire victim narrative that had been carefully constructed for years, marrying into the oldest royal institution on earth and acting shocked when it came with baggage. He framed it like joining a cartel and being surprised when illegal activity shows up. It was brutal because it was simple, and simple jokes land the hardest.
What the fuck is she talking about? She didn't know. The fuck? It's the royal family. They're the original racists.
But then he stepped into the topic that had been treated like a landmine, the baby comment.
That's like marrying into the Budweiser family and going, they drink a lot. This motherfucker's invested in slavery like it was Shark Tank.
When he said even black families ask about a baby's complexion, the room shifted because suddenly agreement couldn't be dismissed as racism. The shield cracked, and once that shield cracked, the floodgates blew open.
They're so racist. They wanted to know how brown the baby's gonna be. I'm like, that's not racist. Because even black people want to know how brown the baby gonna be. Shit.
After that, it wasn't just jokes anymore. It was momentum.Joe Coy didn't wait for a podcast or a safe environment. He did it at the Golden Globes, in front of cameras, in front of the industry, in front of the exact crowd you're not supposed to offend. He compared their entire saga to The Crown, a rich, dysfunctional family drama that the world watches like entertainment. And the audience laughed because deep down, that's what it had become. Not a tragedy, not a revolution, a spectacle. Then he twisted the knife further. The Netflix deal. Tens of millions of dollars. And people still couldn't answer one clean question. What exactly was produced that justified it? That line about getting paid for doing absolutely nothing hit because it echoed something simmering in public opinion. The idea that two people who claimed they wanted privacy kept signing contracts that required more cameras. Jimmy Kimmel wasn't subtle either. He pointed out the irony that they fled the UK over racism and ran to America. He didn't scream it, he didn't rant, he just let the contradiction hang in the air long enough for the audience to connect the dots themselves. And when he turned Harry's 600-page memoir into a punchline, rebranding royal trauma as a children's book parody, the laughter wasn't gentle. It was relieved, like people had been waiting for someone to finally say it without whispering. Jimmy Fallon went smaller, and somehow that made it worse that the pretzel bag. Not baking, not creating, not building, just moving snacks from one bag to another, filmed, packaged, presented as lifestyle content. Fallon's confusion mirrored everyone else's. A Montecito mansion, millions in the bank. And we're documenting snack transfers that at that point, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Oprah, Netflix, 60 Minutes. Another interview, another explanation, another declaration of wanting privacy delivered directly into a camera lens that Stephen Colbert barely had to try. When Meghan explained that she and Harry call each other H&M, he just stared into the camera. Because once you brand yourselves like a clothing store, the satire writes itself. Colin Jost didn't soften it either. His line about America being asked to keep these two wasn't just a joke, it was commentary on displacement. Not wanted back in Britain, not embraced in America, floating in a strange celebrity limbo built entirely on grievance and exposure. And then came the most cutting observation of all: what exactly did Harry gain? Before the marriage, he was flawed but established, a prince with a defined role, a complicated legacy but a legacy nonetheless. After, Netflix deals, podcast attempts, jam launches, and a reputation that now exists primarily inside monologues. When Saturday Night Live turned their marriage into a skit about an unemployed immigrant, it marked a cultural shift. Once Snell makes you a recurring punchline, you've crossed into a different territory. Not feared, not admired. Just material. Trevor Noah's evolution might be the most telling. He started out defending Meghan. He genuinely criticized the monarchy. But then came the Disney premiere moment. Harry networking for voiceover roles like a talent manager. A prince reduced to pitching that image stuck. Royal marriages once moved armies. Now they were chasing animation contracts that Bill Maher took a colder angle. He didn't shout. He diagnosed. You can't beg for privacy and sell memoirs about how much you hate attention. You can't live in generational wealth and sell victimhood as your main export. The contradiction doesn't disappear just because you say it with conviction. And that's where everything escalated, because once the American comedians finished, the British ones stepped in, and they weren't amused. They were offended. Personally, financially, emotionally. Taxpayers funding security. Titles retained. Public criticism of the monarchy while still monetizing the Royal Association. That anger wasn't about jokes anymore. It was about perceived betrayal. And that's the moment when this story stopped being light entertainment and became something sharper. The laughter had turned into a chorus. Not organized, not coordinated, but loud. And here's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath all of it. Comedians don't usually align like this. They argue, they disagree, they compete. Yet in this case, across networks, across countries, across styles, they all seem to arrive at the same conclusion independently. That's not coincidence. That's perception solidifying. But here's where it gets even more explosive. Because the next wave didn't come from late night desks. It came from satire that nearly vanished overnight. And when powerful content disappears suddenly, people don't forget it. They go looking. And that's when things crossed from late night jokes into something far more dangerous, satire that hit so hard it nearly got erased. Because when comedy disappears overnight, people don't shrug. They dig that spitting image didn't just parody Meghan, it dissected her public persona with surgical cruelty. The clips didn't feel like casual mockery. They felt like a mirror held up too close for comfort. And then suddenly, almost magically, those clips were gone. Every episode wiped. Every segment vanished. Whispers of legal pressure, serious money, serious threats, a scramble to bury it. But nothing truly disappears on the internet. In the puppet version, Meghan introduced herself as the ultimate good person, dripping with forced humility while speaking down to everyone around her. That was the punchline. The niceness that felt rehearsed. The kindness that felt branded. That then came the cooking show parody. Soul food that turned out to be a bag of chips with a flour on top. That image detonated across social media because it condensed the entire criticism into one visual, ordinary things repackaged as luxury enlightenment. Basic products presented like profound wisdom. And then the microwave moment, the puppet Meghan snapping at puppet Harry, reminding him she's a duchess. Harry shrinking smaller and smaller in every scene. It was exaggerated, but only slightly. That's why it worked. Satire stings when it's recognizable. And when those clips vanished, it didn't protect the image. It amplified curiosity. People who had never even heard of spitting image suddenly wanted to see what was so explosive it needed to be scrubbed. Then South Park stepped in, and unlike spitting image, South Park doesn't scare easily. They built an entire episode around what they called a global privacy tour. That phrase alone became cultural shorthand. A couple flying around the world, announcing their desire for peace, while sitting in front of every camera available that the episode didn't invent anything. It simply exaggerated what already existed. The book tour, the interviews, the magazine covers, the documentaries. The contradiction wasn't subtle anymore, it was cartoonishly obvious. That the fictional prince holding up a memoir titled Wah-Ah-Ah, that the fictional wife obsessed with branding and Instagram, that the house hunting for a quiet town, while being filmed for content that it wasn't just funny. It was devastating because it was coherent. The narrative had become so predictable that even animation could map it perfectly. And here's what made that moment pivotal. South Park doesn't usually pick targets without cultural consensus. When they lock onto someone, it means public opinion has already shifted enough to make it land safely. And it landed. Memes flooded timelines. Privacy tour trended. The satire moved beyond comedy and into everyday language. At that point, it wasn't just late-night audiences laughing. It was mainstream culture repeating the punchlines. And somewhere in Montecito, you have to imagine the silence felt louder than any booing crowd, because this wasn't a single scandal. It wasn't one bad interview. It wasn't even one misstep. It was accumulation, that interview fatigue, that victim fatigue, that explanation fatigue. And once fatigue sets in, even sympathy evaporates. That John Oliver's assessment cut the deepest. He didn't yell. He didn't mock. He calmly suggested they might not even have the capacity to change. Not unwilling. Unable. That's a different kind of insult. One that suggests the behavior isn't strategic anymore. It's ingrained that if that's true, then the backlash wasn't an attack. It was inevitability, but here's the twist nobody talks about enough. But the machine that built Meghan Markle also built the backlash. Media elevated the fairy tale wedding into a global spectacle. Headlines crowned her a modern feminist icon. Magazines declared her revolutionary. The hype was nuclear. Expectations soared to impossible heights. And when reality didn't match the myth, the fall was dramatic. The very outlets that once protected her started platforming jokes about her. The cultural insulation dissolved. The reverence turned into scrutiny. And scrutiny is ruthless. Kelly Osbourne's rant wasn't polished. It was raw. She said what everyday people were muttering privately, everyone struggles. Everyone deals with trauma. But most people don't monetize it while living in extraordinary privilege. That contrast, suffering packaged in luxury, is what fueled the anger more than anything else. British comedians, in particular, carried a different tone. It wasn't playful. It was offended. The monarchy, flawed as it may be, is tied to national identity. When you criticize it while keeping the title, while benefiting from the brand, while expecting taxpayers to foot security bills, that contradiction feels personal to many. Brits. Jimmy Carr's line about lifelong feminism evaporating at the sight of a prince wasn't just a joke. It was commentary on branding versus behavior. And once branding starts cracking, every move looks strategic. The Jam launch became symbolic. Not because Jam is scandalous. But because it felt small. After Oprah-level revelations, after 6-part documentaries, after memoirs and world tours, the next chapter was Jam. Tiny jars, handwritten labels, lifestyle aspiration packaged in glass. To some, it looked like reinvention. To others, it looked like confirmation that the whole saga had always been about positioning, about building a personal empire out out of royal proximity that Conan O'Brien's wax figure bit was surreal, but that's why it worked. When your likeness becomes a prop in a skit about museum storage and not doing weird things, it signals a shift from relevance to ridicule, and ridicule is hard to reverse. Here's the uncomfortable question hovering over all of it. Did the comedians destroy Meghan Markle? Or did they simply echo what had already crystallized in public opinion? Victimhood versus privilege, independence versus title retention, feminism versus royal dependency, each of those contradictions became material. And once material spreads, it multiplies, the internet accelerated it. Clips clipped again, monologues chopped into viral fragments, hashtags, reaction videos, debate threads. The discourse became endless, and through it all, the central question remains unresolved. Because in the age of viral satire, once you become the punchline, you don't control the script anymore.